All right, let's see. Oh, here you guys come. Yes, it is 6 o'clock in Chicago. I am in Colorado. I'm in Snow, Colorado. It is 5 o'clock here, and it's 7 o'clock in the East Coast. And yeah, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So we're all happy to be here. This is a huge webinar for us. We have over 400, probably 402 people that are registered for the webinar. So it's very exciting. So thank you for joining us. I have fabulous presenters with me. I am Sarah Cooperman. I'm the CEO of SCW Fitness Education, Water in Motion, and our new SEAT chair-based fitness program, very exciting. We also want to make sure that you move your mouse, you go down to the green share button, which is right at the bottom of your page. Scoot over to the left of that. That's the chat box. You can click on that, open it up, and please type in your name, tell me where you're from. Just your first name and shoot it out there. I am really excited because we're expecting about 120 people to show up of this 400 that have registered. But this means that you guys get to ask the questions of these brilliant presenters that we have with us. We have Robert Linkle. He's the owner of I'm going to just say TOA, which is trainingtheolderadult.com. It's a personal training studio and an online continuing education provider for fitness pros. Robert has presented at countless conferences for us. He's a lovely man to work with. He's got his master's degree in personal trainings. He is also NSCA's Personal Trainer of the Year award winner, and he is NSCA's fellowship inductee, and he is very excited to announce that he's also on their board. So we're thrilled that Robert is joining us. We also have Dr. Evan Osar. We're calling him the man in yellow because he's at a new location right now. But Dr. Osar is presented for SCW many moons ago. He's authored Corrective Exercise Solutions to Common Hip and Shoulder Dysfunction. And he also has authored Amazon's #1 bestseller, The SOAS Solution. He's currently in private practice in Chicago. He's visiting his family in Texas. That's where he is now. And he's currently living, I believe, in Wisconsin, right, Evan?
Just outside Milwaukee.
Just outside Milwaukee. Love that. Love that. And we have Dr. Sam Davis with us, AKA Dr. Sam. She is lovely. She has presented for us at many manias, and we really got to know her during the pandemic. She's a former collegiate athlete. She's a doctor of physical therapy. She has a degree in biology, 10 years experience in physical therapy. I can't even tell you how many programs she's certified in. Selective function movement, functional movement screening, instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization, and even in therapeutic cupping, which is pretty exciting. And I am thrilled to announce Sue Grant is joining us. She is absolutely lovely. She was the developer of Older, Wiser Workout. It was a DVD library, but now it is completely online. She is an expert in active aging, and she's the owner of Fit Tips for Pros, and we'll put that link into our chat box here. We have people from all over the country, frankly, all over the world right here. We've got from Georgia, Connecticut, Indiana, Florida, St. Louis, California, Arizona, Dover, Charlotte from Dover, Arkansas, I think it is, New Jersey, Virginia, Middletown, Wisconsin, Connecticut, Chicago, of course, hi, Chicago, that's where I'm originally from, all over, Ocala, Florida. So thank you all for joining us and making this. We've already popped over 100 attendees, so thank you. We have Beth Caney, SCW Sponsor Director, who's managing to herd these wildcats that we've got on here. So I'm just going to launch away. We're going to be talking about perfecting posture for active agers. And the modern world, unfortunately, leads to our posture being negatively affected by our daily routine. And I think this pandemic has even made it worse. Working at desks, scrolling through phones, pushing strollers, it all leads to poor posture. And because we need to be able to use our spine throughout our lifetime, our backs wear out. And we're going to look at the weak areas and how to improve our postures during all stages. And and I know our team is not like ready for this, but Dr. Sam, I'm starting with you. You talked about, what'd you call it?
Hex neck syndrome.
Heck neck
Hex.
syndrome. Like
Hex.
spell that and say that 3 times fast. It's like technology that affects your neck, and
Yes.
it's a syndrome because we're all subject to it. We lean over, we read our phones, we're working on computers, we're sitting at desks, we're even looking at consoles when we drive.
Correct.
So how is this affecting us, Dr. Sam, and what are something we can do to counteract this?
Absolutely. It's definitely something that is on the rise with technology and how everything is progressing. You know, the Washington Post states that smartphone users are using their phone or on their emails and checking things 2 to 4 hours out of the day. And there's an article that states, you know, just simply having your neck flex 15 degrees forward puts about 27 extra pounds on your spine. Another 15 degrees at 30 degrees of flexion and looking forward can put about 40 pounds of pressure on your spine. And continuing to go up, you know, 45 degrees can put 49 pounds. And then literally when you get to about 60 degrees, which a lot of us find ourselves in at computers, can put about 60 pounds of pressure on your cervical spine. Imagine carrying an 8-year-old child around your neck for hours upon hours. And that's kind of the stress that we're putting on our bodies when our posture is that far forward. A lot of things that I tell my patients and clients is it really starts with awareness. You have to be more aware of your posture. You have to bring those phones up to eye level, bring your computers up to eye level, or if you have to, you know, bring yourself down to, you know, so you're at eye level, because your spine, literally your neck needs to be in a neutral position. And when your head is directly over your spine, the weight of the head alone is about 12 to 15 pounds. So it's important that we keep things upright and straight.
Well, 12 to 15 pounds, 15, you got to be really smart. I thought it was like 11. Anyway, maybe that's just me. And what's interesting is you said 2 to 4 hours. Do you know what I found on my phone today? I did a little research. Last week, I averaged 5 hours and 30 minutes on my phone. And you do it while you're, shut up, Robert. I see you laughing at me. You're looking down and you're moving. So I got my standing desk, love doing it, tends to help. And how do we counteract this, Evan? We're seeing people, they have forward head, they have, you know, the kyphosis in their upper back. How are we counteract this? You know, you're a physical therapist, you deal with fitness professionals all the time. How can we take some of our physical therapy cues and recommendations and exercise and apply that to our everyday clients?
Yeah, one of the things we teach our patients is number one, you need to change your habits on a regular basis. It can't just be once a day. It can't be once in a while. It has to be on a regular basis. One of the easiest things to do is to actually do exactly what you're suggesting, Sarah, and just do this with me. So sit at the edge of your chair. Everyone just sit at the edge of your chair. Just imagine there's a string from the back side of your head and neck pulling you up. So on my big old noggin here, you can see like a little knob here that's called the EOP. So just grab yourself by the back of the EOP there, that bump of knowledge, and just gently pull yourself towards the ceiling, because the rest of your body follows your head. So your head and your eyes will direct the rest of your body. So if you think about being long from that position, it sort of pulls your rib cage along with the head. Now from there, just imagine, or you can just take your hands, place your hands on your rib cage on either side. For clients that have shoulder problems, you can use a strap, wrap a strap around the rib cage. Now from this position, take 3 deep breaths into your hands, because what we want to do is fill up all the way around the rib cage. So it's not just the belly, we have to fill up around the rib cage, because what helps us maintain upright posture is actually pressure regulation. It's using the diaphragm appropriately, using the entire rib cage to breathe. So let's just take 3 deep breaths in. Breathe in through the nose, because that warms, filters, and moistens the air. It also helps increase the nitric oxide production. Breathe in and out through the nose. Maintain that nice long spine position. 2 more breaths. and breathe out. And then one more time, take a deep breath in and then breathe out. And have your client do that. Just tell your client 5 times a day, because if they do it 1 time a day, that's a benefit. So tell them much more than you really expect them to do. And then at least you get 1 or 2 times a day. And just again, to Sam's point, Dr. Sam's point, just creating that awareness, that thought process moves them in the right direction.
And Sue, I see you nodding. Please share.
I nod way too much. Just to piggyback on what Dr. Sam and Evan said, I know that everyone watching this, I'm preaching to the choir, but if you have clients that really aren't so sure if it's really that important, you can do a little test with them, and I'll have everyone do this at home if you want to, is go ahead and slump and hold your breath. And now take your right hand and see how far back you can rotate it. And then do the same thing with your left hand. Now take one of Evan's beautiful diaphragmatic breaths, sit up really tall, elongate the space between your hip and your bottom rib, and do the same thing. Take a beautiful diaphragmatic breath in, and then see how far back you can take your right hand. Was it a lot farther?
Yeah.
So range of motion is so different if you have good posture. It's just such a game changer. And sometimes when people feel things, they believe it a lot more, and they're willing to do the everyday exercises like Evan so beautifully pointed out.
And I like what you mentioned before we turn the camera on, Sue. You were talking about the retraction and the depression of the shoulders, which I think that in some regards, we're almost fighting with our body the same way, to prevent the forward head pushing your chin back, but lifting up, feeling that lift, feeling that breath, feeling that hip rib connection expand is frankly just more uplifting.
Yeah.
It emotionally, and I think as a yoga instructor, I integrate that breathing in unconsciously, but Evan, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Robert, you've got some special exercises you like to integrate.
I do. Sam, did you have something to say real quick?
I did. I love the fact that Sue brought that great example up, because I want to point out the fact that a lot of times when you come in what we call shoulder impingement syndrome, it's that posture that she just presented. A lot of times when we have what we call suboccipital headaches, where you have just headaches that are throbbing and pounding from the back of your head, and they come across the front top of your head, a lot of times it's contributed to that same posture that Sue just showed you. So when we elongate, like Evan says, when we get our shoulders down and back, we're able to increase the space in our glenohumeral joint versus compressing it down and causing impingement.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Robert, you're on, babe.
Absolutely. Thank you. So something that I like to do, everybody, with my clients, like one of the big issues that comes about with our posture is we do so much in front of us every day that we naturally just start to mold and like fold that way. So as soon as my clients get in here, we have some basic mobilities they do, but we have a band series that I like to do with them. And this can be from any height that I would say shoulder height or higher. That way you're encouraging up kind of postures versus pulling you down. But the first one, start with a supinated grip, your palms up, and just have them step back to some tension. And we work through, some retraction at the shoulder blade and trying to get the elbows to come back beyond the spine. And we do this for like a set of 20. Notice my feet are split. I've got a little stagger stance, my left foot back. I'll come forward. We can go to a pronated grip, do the other foot this time, staggered back, and my elbows wide, pulling just underneath the chin here. And then we can step forward and do a thumbs up grip and a slight little hinge and a straight arm pull down. And as they're pulling down, you can also pull apart. Okay, I'll show you side view here or rear view. As I pull down, I'm also pulling apart. So you're trying to make like a bigger triangle kind of action. And this is going to address all those posterior chain muscles around the rotator cuff, the rhomboids, the traps, the levator, subscapularis, lats. And you're kind of addressing everything and just priming it all to be a little taller. Now, if we can do that before every session, and if they have bands and anchors at home or pulleys and cables, anything like that they could do on a regular basis, you're only going to do them a good service here and encouraging that posterior strength development.
And you've also mentioned in the past at other webinars and seminars that I've gone to yours, which I love, you talked about doing it unilaterally? Because sometimes, well, I'll let you explain, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we already have our asymmetries just from I'm right-handed, I'm left-handed. I, played baseball for 20 years, and so I've developed strength, or a block leg from throwing or kicking. So we already have these asymmetries kind of built up. And we have something called bilateral dominance. So the movements I was just doing there, as I'm rowing with that supinated grip in both arms, am I truly 50-50? It may look like that, but if you really start to dissect it, it might be 60 my dominant arm, 40 of the other side. I'm just good at disguising that. So as soon as you introduce lifts, like the very first time, we teach it bilaterally, learn the movement pattern, get used to doing that, and then let's start to break it down and let each side work independently and start to seek muscular equality. That's one of our sayings, right? Maybe somebody that's 70 or 80 years old, we're never going to seek it and find true equality, but we can get damn close, right? We can really work on improving their quality of life by making them more symmetrical. We'll start to reduce their abilities to fall, to stumble, to be able to reach all the way to 180 degrees with both arms, break down frozen shoulders, improve their posture. I mean, just all the possibilities come about with these little tiny strategies that you can implement on a regular basis, and they take it into real life.
Yeah, and we also get this dominance, where if we fall, what's going to happen? We're going to land with our right arm because we're righty. And then how am I going to get up if I've broken my right wrist? So I have to, I understand the importance of a dominant side, but we have to make sure that there is a little bit more equality. Evan, I saw you nodding. I'm sure you have a comment here about,
Got lots of comments. One of the things that we hear in our industry a lot is, well, the body should be symmetrical, or I should say asymmetrical. And that's true to a point. Yeah, our heart's over more on the left side, our lungs are asymmetrical, the liver's over on the right side. However, as Robert was pointing out, it's not the asymmetry that we're concerned with, it's the degree of asymmetry. So one of the things that we want to do, and why we wanted to prioritize sort of unilateral patterning, why we want to train our clients to not just do bilateral lifts and bilateral patterns, is to start to improve this asymmetry. Because Robert has an experience with his father falling and having a major injury. My in-laws both fell, couldn't get themselves off the floor. And if we have a side that's less dominant, obviously we all have a side that's less dominant, we're likely going to trip, fall, or not be as balanced on that side. So we want to help our clients address those asymmetries, address those weaker sides, those less stable sides, so we can minimize the risk of falling, minimize the risk of shoulder impingement, because they're compensating so much through one side versus the other.
That makes a lot of sense. Dr. Sam, you were going to say something?
Yes. So important about symmetry, what both of you have already said. I also want to point out the fact that a lot of times there's a muscle imbalance between the anterior and posterior chain. And, for myself, I tore both ACLs playing collegiate basketball. And I love injury prevention, not only because of my own injuries, but just seeing what my mom went through as well. And I've learned through research that a lot of times females are more quad dominant versus hamstring strain. So sometimes there's even a deficit between those and an asymmetry that can lead to injuries that we actually could help prevent as well.
Sorry.
Oh, Sue, please go ahead.
Thank you. As we get older, our muscles in the front get short and tight, and our muscles in the back get long and weak. So just like Robert so beautifully demonstrated, the more you can strengthen those back muscles and try to open up these chest muscles with those, wall stretches or doorway stretches to keep the front open and then the back strong, that will help with some of that asymmetry, anterior, posterior as well.
Are there any particular stretches that you enjoy and that you recommend with your clients?
Funny you should ask.
That enhance that flexibility.
So hopefully you can see, okay.
You can see you, you look great.
Probably see this one with your hand on the wall. If it's too hard for them to have this extension with their hand, they can do it with a fist, but just using your other elbow as a driver. I do all my stretches moving, dynamic stretches. So start off easy and then take that elbow back a little bit to stretch out those muscles in your pecs is a lovely way. And they can do that for homework anytime they want, or in a doorway opening up like so.
That's great. And Robert, you were going to contribute something?
Oh, no, I was just agreeing. I really like the idea and the mention of dynamic flexibility versus ballistic for sure, but static stretching. Really good research out of Canada. Dean Somerset, if you guys haven't read some of his work, has some very good information, really kind of proving that static stretching doesn't really do much of anything. It feels nice. It's a good mental break. But as far as a physical improvement or change, dynamic flexibility is where true improvement is made. And then moving through greater ranges of motion with load in your hand. I know I always come back to load, you've got to lift weights. But if we want bone density, lift weights. You want more flexibility, lift weights. You want more muscle strength, lift weights. You want to live longer, you want to look better, you want to stand taller, you want all of it. The result is, the baseline is, the foundation is, put some resistance in your hands and you'll get there.
It's really fascinating. And could you repeat Dean's last name, and I'll ask Beth to put it in the chat box?
Somerset.
Somerset. Dean
I'll type that in
Somerset.
there for you. Dean Somerset.
Okay,
Really
great.
good research, yeah.
And Beth did put in Dr. Osar's latest book.
Beth.
That the
Number one, Amazon, top seller, baby.
So, and it's
can I just-
really interesting with the you talk about the dynamic flexibility, Sue, and Robert, you agreed with that. And here I go with my yoga, hold a pose, breathe, breathe, breathe. It's like you sink lower, lower, lower. But when I'm working with my older adults in my active aging yoga class that I teach, it's much more dynamic. And it's much more effective because it not only stretches, but it warms the body up and keeps the body warm during the flexibility. Evan, you were going to say?
Two things I would just add to that. Actually, if you look at the research on static stretching, there's a time and place for it, right? If somebody's coming out of a cast, for example, yeah, you need to do some static stretching just to lengthen the tissue. But actually, if you look at the research on static stretching, it actually shows that it improves the person's ability to tolerate the stretch. It doesn't actually stretch the tissue. I mean, you have to do a lot to actually physically stretch the tissue. And most of our clients that are doing stretches, they're not lengthening the tissue. However, I was actually just writing this today in my new book, the second edition of Corrective Exercise Solutions. And I literally was writing the best way to improve mobility and flexibility is actually to move yourself in good alignment, good posture, because that gives your joints the impetus and your nervous system the input that it needs to actually improve range of motion. So, just concurring with what we've been talking about.
That's great. Go ahead.
Ev, I heard that the strength training chapter of your new book is actually pretty good.
Yeah, this guy wrote a chapter for my book, so I would recommend it. He's a bald, handsome guy, and he's got a really good beard too.
You know what? If you two don't start dating soon, I don't know what I'm going to do.
We're already in love, man.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know. We're very politically correct here. Okay, Sue, at least someone raised their hand. Okay.
Well, just to piggyback on what all these brilliant people are saying, I thought I would show, I feel silly doing this, Evan, because you literally wrote the book on the psoas, but I just like to show what, because if these hip flexors are tight, I know this is one of the questions that we were going to talk about. If these are tight, you can't have good posture. And so it's really important to stretch out the front of your hip. But how I do that stretch, hopefully you can see me okay, dynamically, is right foot forward, left foot back, and then you do a hip driver. But then if you add that arm driver, I always try to do all my stretches and all my exercises in 3D and three planes of motion. So start off with the traditional sagittal plane, but then if you use your arm as a driver and take it sideways over your head while you're pushing your hips forward, you're going to get that frontal plane going. And then if you take your arm about shoulder height and reach around the corner, then you'll get a little bit more of that transverse plane. So just a great way to stretch out those hip flexors, which Evan wrote a book about.
And dynamically, love it. Dr. Sam, how can we identify what's causing poor posture in our clients?
I think it's important to pay attention to the red flags. A lot of times people ignore pain, people ignore swelling, These are signs, these are red flags that something wrong is going on in your kinetic chain. Having little tiny pains in our foot and ankle. Why is one foot and ankle hurting more than the other foot and ankle? And we tend to ignore that. Well, that isn't normal. You shouldn't have, one side of your body more painful than the other. When you go to pick your son or your daughter up, you feel a sharp pain in your shoulder. It goes away, so you ignore it. But then you go to maybe put some laundry up or put the groceries up and you feel a sharp pain. It doesn't last, and then you kind of ignore it. And over time, that's just micro trauma that's adding up to macro trauma. Basically, you're waiting for that itis to come about because you let the little tiny incidents kind of build up over time. So it's important to pay attention to your body. If something doesn't feel right, don't ignore it. Go seek, a professional that looks at functional movement. Make sure that you're taking care of your body. A lot of times I tell my patients and clients, our body is our vehicle, and sometimes we're more amped to take the tin cans outside in the garage to a mechanic when the check engine light comes on. But when our personal check engine light comes on, we're like, oh, it's okay. We'll wait. We got to put everything else first. No, make sure you put yourself first. and
the worst thing, Dr. Sam, the worst thing is, as fitness pros, we're the worst. We are absolutely the worst. Like, I'm fine. This is a good pain. You know what? A lot of times it isn't a good pain. Dr. Osar, how do you, because he's a doctor too, I have to,
Please.
I have to spread the love here. But how do you identify the poor posture with your clients or what's causing it? Because sometimes we get a discomfort in our shoulder. It's really interesting. And my chiropractor will say, you're feeling it in your shoulder, but Sarah, it's your psoas. You're out of alignment. It's across the body. So how do you see it in your clients, Evan? And you're a master of being able to translate it for fitness professionals. So please share.
Yeah, one of the things we really encourage, a couple things. Number one is you have to understand some basic fundamental knowledge about anatomy, biomechanics, and motor control, because that's really what's driving your clients, the decisions they make, why their nervous system does certain things. Because when you understand what optimal posture and movement strategies are, then you can start to identify suboptimal strategies. Yeah, we know what forward head looks like. We know what forward shoulder looks like. That's very obvious. But to find out what's driving those issues, you need to dig a little bit deeper into the client's history. You need to know their history, as Dr. Sam was alluding to as well. And you have to look at their posture and movement habits. You have to be able to assess that and determine if that's an optimal or suboptimal strategy. So you have to understand normal anatomy or anatomy and function to make that decision. So, we encourage, I'm sure all of us are in coordination with this, that we encourage you to really understand the body, how it works, as well as assessing. Like, how do you assess? A simple, easy assessment. We teach our clients to do this, is just to do a simple shoulder flexion. Just have your clients flex their shoulder up overhead and then compare it side to side. Look to the side that's a bit more limited. We'll have them do a couple of other rotations, like maybe trunk rotation or standing hip rotation. So they start to identify those patterns in their own body. And then when we collect this information, so you don't need to do tons of assessments, you just have to be very good at the ones that you do. Then you collect that information and then you make a determination. What are the things that are short and tight that our client needs to address from a soft tissue, like a manual therapy as clinicians, or a self-myofascial release for fitness professionals? What are some things we can do from a mobility standpoint, from a dynamic stretching that will help increase tissue length? And then finally, what can we do from a corrective exercise standpoint, whether it be activation, breathing, exercises, to then address where some of the weaknesses are that we identified through the assessment. So it's really a process. And that's one of the things we really teach during our certifications. We're going to share with the audience at the Active Aging Summit here, is the process you take your clients through from assessment to corrective exercise to their functional exercises.
Yeah. And one thing that I'm going to bring up, and Robert, you said this. I always think, how am I going to assess my clients? Like, what exercise? Do I have them touch their toes? Do I have them do this? And Robert, go. Just tell them what you do, because it's just easy and brilliant.
We do something called a movement observation. To the fitness professional, it's an assessment, but to my clients, it's an observation. And basically, I just don't tell them that they're being assessed. I ask them to start doing movements. So come on over. We're going to do some sit to stands, do 2 or 3. Let me make it a little lower, do a couple more. Cool. Let me come over here, grab this band. Let me see some different pulls. Excellent. Can you get on the floor? No, not over here. I want you to get on the floor over here. Oh, they have to get up. They come over here. Yeah, cool. Could you grab that pencil? I just dropped it. I watch how they hinge. They pick up stuff. I watch their gait as they transition. So they don't really know. And the reason that I do this is as soon as you tell somebody that you're watching, assessing, testing, scoring, all of a sudden, oh, my posture is perfect. And this is how I move normally all the time. Everything changes. And I want to see what they naturally do without any kind of pressure. What do you do when you're just moving around? That gives me the best feedback. Now I can see what they truly do, not what they think I want to see, right?
You're just sneaky.
I'm very sneaky, very sneaky. Yes, yeah, and it's a good way to get good natural responses from them, so you know what you're dealing with.
I think you learned that in your graduate degree. That's what I think.
For sure.
And Sue, are you sneaky? Now, how do you assess your clients?
No idea, Sarah.
Yeah.
What was your question?
How do you assess your clients to determine if they're imbalances, if there's inflexibility, if there's reduced strength in one area or another? Does it take you a long time? Is it pretty, Robert kind of does it in the first whole session, just watching them. What do you find to be effective?
I do Robert's sneaky trick as well. And, but the first time I meet someone, if they're interested in fall prevention and they have balance issues, I do the Fullerton Advanced Balance Scale as well to test their balance, and that's more formal. But I like the sneaky, just when they're walking in to see, okay, how is their gait, and take it from there.
And how do you assess their balance? Do we have them do particular poses?
It's it's the Fullerton Advanced Balance Scale. It's the Fall Proof program developed by Dr. Deborah Rose. And I'm a master instructor for that. So in fact, anyway, I'll stop talking about that. But it's a series of 10 tests, and it's pretty standardized.
Oh, great. Beth, would you mind putting that in the chat box too? That's Dr. Rose's from Fall Proof. That's a phenomenal book. It really is. It's a great resource. Yeah, Evan?
Yeah, no, I highly recommend anything Deborah Rose does. I'm sort of a super fan of hers. I got to meet her at a conference one time. She was sitting right next to me. And I was like, I was like kind of shaking because I read her book, and I was like, oh, this is Deborah Rose right next to me. So that was great.
You're a stalker. We know it. You're a stalker. And Dr. Sam, this is probably Evan for you to start with. How can the foot muscles impact posture and balance in the various stages of life?
Yeah, when you think about the foot, right, it's the contact, our contact to the ground, right, the contact to the surface. So the nervous system is constantly monitoring what the foot is doing on the ground. And then we do things like we shove it into shoes that are the wrong size for our feet or fancy shoes. And we sort of numb the foot and some of that sensation that we need to feel from the bottom of the foot and send those signals back to the central nervous system. So if we look at a lot of our clients' feet, especially our older clients, we see their feet that aren't nice and wide in the front. Their toes are not nice and straight. Their foot isn't nice and supported upon the foot tripod. We see toes, maybe arches that are collapsed. We see toes that are gripped and or claw toes. We see bunions and hammer toes and things like that, that all impact the ability to stabilize, as well as just as importantly, or even more importantly, send those important signals back to the central nervous system. So one of the things we can do is super easy, and I'm sure Sam will talk a little bit about some of the things she does as well, is just take a simple device. Now, this is an activator, from Rolga, has a dome surface. I don't make any money by telling you that, but it's a great way just to put the foot on there and start to activate or wake up the proprioceptors on the bottom of the foot. And you see a lot of people, they roll their foot and they're just kind of doing this kind of useless kind of movement. Get on there and be very deliberate about how you press down, where you press down, because what you're doing is you'll stimulate the receptors of the foot. And even in our older clients, those receptors are still alive, even if they have proprioceptive I should say, peripheral neuropathy, where they've lost sensation in the bottom of the foot, just manipulating the joints of the foot still sends signals back to the central nervous system. So doing footwork with a lacrosse ball, tennis ball, an activator type device is so important for balance and overall postural awareness because of the information we're receiving from the foot.
Very important. And Sam, you've been nodding, and I know you have things to share.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. A lot of times people lose that sensation or that proprioceptive input that's so important for maintaining our balance, along with our visual system and our vestibular system. So there's three main systems that we really rely on for our balance. And as we age, we tend to actually not realize how much we use our vision. So when I'm training my clients that are having balance deficits, I want to make sure that I target each system separately and try to train those. So, definitely the rolling of the tennis ball is great. I even like to use marbles. I think, picking up marbles and giving them that tactile cue can also help stimulate that input, but then putting them on an uneven surface like an Eric's pad or a stability Bosu ball or something that gives them an unstable surface, that will have to train that proprioception, as well as training the vestibular, taking away your vision. I have patients close their eyes, put their feet together, see how stability or how stable they are, how much sway do they have, and then you can progressively increase that tactile cueing by putting them on something unstable and closing their eyes. Then you're really challenging the other systems and making sure that you're training all three systems because they're super important.
I love it. And Hannah, who is in our group, put a big heart up there. And you obviously love what you're saying. I love to see people are, Michelle says, I'm so geeking out on this information. I love it. I feel the exact same way. Sue, what are some of the movements that you use with your clients to improve the posture? You showed some of the stretching exercises. Robert shared with us some of the strengthening exercises. Do you have other exercises or techniques that you'd like to share with this group?
Yeah, quite a few. We have 4 hours, right?
No, I know. Well, actually, I'm looking here, and you guys, we've got 13 minutes. Do we even have 13
really
minutes?
fast.
I don't think we do.
Speed demos. If they're going to do shoulder
We've got
rolls, make sure
8
they do
minutes.
them backwards rather than forwards, because again, you want to open up the chest. It's also really important to get the scapula, the shoulder blades, moving on that upper spine, the thoracic spine. So just doing reaches in that transverse plane gets that scapula moving. But then again, you want to do it in all three planes of motion. So if you take your arms overhead, you'll get that frontal plane, or you can just go straight ahead. That gets the scapula moving, and it has to be able to be mobilized. 3 different parts of our body that need to be mobilized: the thoracic spine, the hips, and as Dr. Sam was saying, the feet, and also Evan. Really important to have those feet mobilized, because when your foot hits the ground, it's supposed to evert a little bit and roll in, and then when it pushes off, it should roll out, supinate. And so you have to do those ankle circles. I don't know if you can see my feet, but just
we can't see your feet.
Okay, well they're down
But
there.
mimic with your hand.
Yes.
We do our ankle circles, both directions.
And go like that, then your feet will roll, and that will help to mobilize your feet as well. So they're supinating, pronating, just to keep, so that when your foot hits the ground, the chain reaction that's supposed to happen and naturally should happen can happen if your feet are mobilized.
Now, I'm going to ask Robert, how do you, I think we know this answer a little bit, but how do you think this pandemic has really affected the posture of our older adults? Oops, you're muted. It's usually me that's muted, and with my dog barking, I can't seem to. I'm going to ask him to unmute.
There we go. Thank you. I had to mute for a second because my kids were yelling, and then I couldn't unmute. What was your question? I'm sorry.
I have no idea. It was about the pandemic. It was about how do we think this pandemic has really affected our older adults? Because some of them honestly have begun walking because they were so isolated, they began walking. But some of them end up sitting on that couch, watching Netflix. My new thing is, HBO Max. It's like, how are we going to deal with these clients when they come back, hopefully in droves, to our fitness facilities?
Yeah. Part of me says slowly and carefully, and the other part of me says the clock's ticking and they've been sitting for 18 months and doing nothing. So I would say progressively appropriate, but with some urgency. I have a really good slide in one of my presentations that shows like 14 days of bed rest / sitting on the couch, how your body goes into full-blown sarcopenia. Through atrophy, early onset, you start to shrink. So if that happened in 2 weeks, it's going to take upwards of 6 months to rebuild what is lost in 2 weeks. So if we go too aggressively with people to come in, we're probably going to hurt them, probably going to send them back. They're going to get discouraged, but they're also motivated. They're excited. They're ready to get back. So finding opportunities to be social, opportunities to start to progress them back in. We do something called rucking, which is basically just loaded walking, which is great for them to do on their off days when they're not resistance training. They could use a vest, they could use a backpack, anything where they just put a little extra 5 or 10 pounds on their frame when they go out for their 1 or 2 or 3 mile walks every other day. That will help a ton with overall body strength and bone density, cardiovascular output, VO2 max. All of this is addressed by that. So baby steps, but continuous baby steps. We will get there. It's a state of urgency. This is definitely an epidemic for the older populations, and the clock is ticking. But we're the front line. We're the ones that need to implement the strategy with them. And the most educated response you can do with them, the better. So learning from these fine folks, coming to the summit, getting that information and implementing that as safely and as efficiently as you can, that's the way to go.
Well, speaking of the summit, I am going to share a little video, show you guys what's going on. We have a great convention coming up. It's March 19th and 20th. It's 2 days. It's completely virtual, so it doesn't matter where you are, you can come and join us. We've got a great little video here, and here we go. So that gives you, I hope that worked okay, guys. Did that work? Maybe I didn't share the music with you. Sorry about that. What I'm going to do also is I'm going to show you a brand new program that we do have for active agers. It's our new SCW has created our SEAT program, and I want you to take a look at it. It's really kind of cool. It is a wonderful supported exercise for ageless training, which is really nice. I'll show you a little bit of what that program is about. I really like it because it works as a chair-based functional fitness program, very focused on posture and alignment. It's a great, if you guys want to check it out, it's seatfitness.com. And last but not least, I want you guys to go live to a convention. We have DC Mania that's coming up in February. We just launched California Mania. It's in San Francisco. Take a look. It's very exciting. Wear your mask and show up. So this is wonderful. Thank you guys. Thank you all of you for joining us for this webinar. We're very excited to have you guys as presenters at our Active Aging Summit that's coming up. It's going to be in March. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Dr. Sam. We're thrilled that you joined us today. And thank you, Beth, for running us and remembering to hit record. So watch for an email. We've recorded this. Feel free to share this with your friends. And we will see you guys next Tuesday. So have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Sarah.